Apple has opened its first store in India, with its second store set to open on Thursday. The move comes amid a push by the iPhone maker to expand its market share in the region, as well as shift some production there as it shifts its focus from China. But its presence in China is still strong, of course, due to its extensive supply chain. Yahoo Finance's Allie Garfinkle has all of the latest details on Apple's diversification from Beijing. Allie, break this down for us because, they're still going to be operating. They will still have ties in China, of course, and they report out Greater China as a business segment. But what does this India move mean?
So, Brad, there are a couple of things to note here. First, unequivocally, this is absolutely a big week for India and Apple and that story. Those two new stores are a big moment, as is the case for Tim Cook's meeting with Prime Minister Modi in India. That said, you're right. The ties to China will exist for a very long time. For instance, Apple back last year said it was moving about 25% of its iPhone production to India, which of course leaves a huge portion of it in China. Now, why? There are sort of a couple of pieces of the reasons that the exit from China won't necessarily be an easy one for Apple, if that's one they should decide upon. The first is pretty simple. It's actually a piece of history, right? Apple has been, I think I had someone describe to me, Apple as the ultimate champion of Chinese manufacturing. And it's the sort of thing, that's not the sort of thing you unwind, because not only is there infrastructure, there are ties, there are government connections. It's the sort of thing where they have spent a lot of time together, Apple and China, quite simply. That said, infrastructure is another piece of it. One of the things to consider here, Brad, is that India's infrastructure is not as developed as China's, particularly when it comes to supply chain. So that's something that is going to take time for India to develop. So it's the sort of thing that even if Apple wanted to make the move tomorrow, India doesn't quite have the infrastructure to do it. And lastly is a concern for politics. I won't take you too far down this rabbit hole, but essentially walking away from China overnight is not only logistically impossible, it is politically impossible. That transition period, I had one fellow at the Brookings Institute tell me, is going to be very delicate. So it's the sort of thing that, yes, Apple will be very dependent on China for some time, but we will see them start to diversify. And I think it's also important to say why we got here. We're watching this kind of geopolitical shift in real time. I had one source tell me our cooperation with China is on the downslide, and the fact that this is happening in the aftermath of COVID is also, I think, really important. Remember, Apple has had a lot of supply chain issues in China throughout COVID. For example, we saw the Foxconn factory protests at the end of last year, as was the case with the Shanghai mass COVID lockdowns. So it's the sort of thing, there is a lot of history there is a lot of backlog, but COVID kind of pushed things over the edge for Apple to move out of China. That said, there's also a very simple fact why India looks like a really good market. It is now the most populous country in the world, Brad.
Yeah, pretty straightforward there, Allie. And they're opening stores there and whatnot as well. India, though, of course, is only one market, big as it is. Where else is Apple looking to diversify as it looks away from China?
That's a great question, Julie, because there are actually a lot of other countries in the mix. For instance, a huge number of MacBooks are produced in Vietnam right now, as is the case for other products in Malaysia, Thailand. So India is going to kind of be the star, I think, for its sheer size. But there are definitely other countries in the mix, not only when it comes to manufacturing, but when it comes to other markets for Apple.
Thanks so much, Allie. Appreciate it.